Hello, students. Welcome to week 4 of Graphic Design 1 online. This week, we'll be going through alignment and the importance of making sure that your information is, again, organized. In our last lecture, we talked about just making sure that we're better communicators as designers. Like I said before, our main job as designers is to become better communicators, to help those that we're enabling to communicate by hitting the targets properly, whatever that target audience might be. This might be your congregation, this might be other students, this might be clients, or whatever the case might be. Your job is to be a communicator through the things that you design, through the information that you put together. In our last class or in our last lecture, we talked through some beginner principles that will get you started with that idea of organization of information, things like proximity and harmony, and making sure that things just have balance and making sure that things are in their proper place. This week, we're going to talk about alignment. Alignment might be something that a lot of you are probably a little bit more familiar with. Some of this does deal with, some people might have a little bit of a better sense of this just by eyeballing things, but alignment is something that is important for our designs. Um, when I was teaching on campus, one of the things that I would always tell my classes is that when it comes to graphic design, when it comes to something like alignment, you can eyeball it, but sometimes it's not going to be as precise as something like any of the tools in your design software might allow you to kind of just ensure that things are aligned properly. So I always tell people that the difference between a great design and something that's kind of just mediocre is just making sure that things are aligned. If you're creating a menu, if you're creating a bulletin, even if you're just creating a quick announcement or something, we'll just make it really simple. Let's just say that you're, working social media for a company, a business, or an organization, or for those of you that have been on campus, maybe you're working for maybe you're doing social media for a collegian, something that can really take your designs, your announcements, things that you might put up on your stories to the next level is just making sure that things are aligned. Something as simple as, I'm putting this announcement on this picture or on this blank background. Come to this event at this time. If something is misaligned by even just a little bit, it throws the whole design off. Even if it's just a quick story, it makes it look less professional, and we want to shoot for excellence. We want to strive for excellence in everything that we do, especially as designers. We have the know-how to do some of these things, and we want to do better with those things. And the nice thing is that there are tools to help you if you've had any experience with social media, creating a story or doing something like that, similar to that. Even on something like Instagram, creating a story on Instagram, it does have the tools to help you align your text, to align your elements. So alignment. Alignment as a concept creates a path for the eye to view the design. It helps you to guide the eyes, to guide the viewer's eyes throughout the design. And that's part of your job as a communicator, as a designer, is you're trying to make it easier for people to understand, easier for people to process the whatever the information is that you're trying to communicate to them. So you want to create a path for the eye to view the design. If you've taken photography or if you have any interest in photography, one of the things that we teach is that there is certain principles that help you to guide the viewer's eye, to guide the eye throughout a design, a photo. And one of those is leading lines. It's a very similar concept as far as you use those leading lines to guide the viewer's eyes towards what's important. Alignment also triggers a consistent return point when reading. Whenever you're reading a body of text, you want to make sure that you have kind of that return point, and typically that's going to be on the left side. We'll talk about that in just a little bit in a couple of slides as far as what is that return point, what does that look like. Also sets visual hierarchy, especially in linear layouts. You want to create some level of hierarchy. We're going to talk about that principle in a couple of lectures. Hierarchy is placing things that are important in places of prominence. Some of you have already demonstrated this just by using something as simple as using uh, a heavier typeface or a heavier font when it comes to the different fonts and different variations. Just making something heavier or bold will place that in prominence on your design, on your whatever it is that you're trying to communicate. Visual hierarchy, you're just placing kind of like an order or a checklist for the viewer. so that they can process the information in the correct order. When you're looking at a newspaper, the first thing that you should be looking at is going to be your headlines. It's not going to be the body of text. It might be a photo even, but you want to make sure that there's some level of this is going to be what's first. So I'm gonna place some kind of an emphasis on it. I'm gonna do something to it. I'm gonna make sure that it's easily understood. This is going to be first as far as what you should be looking at. Alignment sets visual hierarchy, especially in linear layouts. We just said that. But it also forms patterns and implied lines throughout aligned elements. And I apologize for the part that's removed there. But implied lines through aligned elements. And we'll talk about that through this lecture. You're going to be creating patterns. You're going to be creating implied lines. So that they're not actual physical lines that you might see on the design. But you can look at the example on the right. We could use each of those emboldened and big and blown out pieces of text as lines. You've got one, two, three, four, five almost columns throughout that design that draw your attention throughout the whole thing and kind of guide you through that. But there are going to be patterns, there are going to be implied lines, not physical ones, but things that almost create those lines. And we'll see examples of that through this lecture. Alignment shows relationships between elements by lining up objects in the design. This might be a body of text. This might be your text body, your copy, or this might be things like shapes or pictures in your design. Align refers to things that relate to each other. Alignment helps you to show that things show relation. It also helps you to control eye movement. We talked about movement in our last lecture. Movement is not necessarily anything that's actually moving in your design. Sometimes it might be, but movement refers to your ability to guide the viewer's eye throughout the design. But alignment also removes chaos. I think that's the most important thing that we can talk about here, is it removes chaos within the design and it makes sure that everything stays orderly. Horizontal, this is an example of horizontal alignment. If something is horizontally aligned, that means that either the left or right, or even sometimes both, margins are going to be equal. Horizontal alignment can apply across an entire page or in columns. Horizontally aligned items can be flush with the left or right margins. Just remember to keep an eye on rag. Rag is going to be that white space. You can see this at the bottom right-hand corner of the example here. The white space left at the end of a left justified line of text. Too much of this rag can create a sense of visual misalignment and hinder readability and um, visual appeal of the design. So you don't want to have too much of that. So you're going to want to mess around with either the text size or even just the spacing of your text body itself in order to make sure that there's not a huge gap with that rag. Vertical, this is vertical alignment. The text is aligned with the top and bottom margins of the image. In vertical alignment, your text or other design elements are lined up with the top and or the bottom of the margins of the page. Again, the margins, those are just the edges of your page. Like horizontal alignment, vertical alignment can apply to the whole page or just portions of it. This is edge alignment. The text is aligned along the left edge. This can be true for the right, bottom left, or bottom right. Edge alignment occurs when your text and design elements are lined up with each other's top, bottom, or side edges. Unlike horizontal and vertical alignment, edge alignment isn't affected by the page margin. And then we've got center alignment. The center is center aligned. Center alignment is exactly what it sounds like. Your elements are lined along a central axis. So it's going to be along that center or that vertical axis that's going up and down throughout your design. Center alignment is a little bit more formal, which is why you don't often see it on things like wedding invitations. Sorry, why you will often see it on things like wedding invitations, party invitations, things like that. Center alignment isn't ideal, though, for large body of text because it's also less readable. And we'll see in a second why that's true. Each line of text starts in a different place, so your eye doesn't follow the words as easily or as naturally. So again, helping the eye, helping to guide the eye. We want there to be a natural flow. We call that easy readability or easily digestible. So when it comes to center alignment or center justified, whatever you want to call it, you don't want to do this for a very heavy body of text, something like an invitation, an announcement, something like that. maybe even something that has several lines of text, not just a complete body, if that makes sense. So several lines of text, meaning we'll talk about for like a an invitation. Here's the location, here's the date and time, here's instructions to RSVP. Something like that, you can use center alignment because you've got several different lines that encompass a larger body of text. But if you have something like a something a little bit more heavily digestible, as far as there's a lot of heavy reading that has to go into that, um, we'll use the example of like something like research reports. I wouldn't write a research report in center alignment. Why? Because there's going to be a lot of reading from the viewer, from the reader. And for something like that, we'll see in an example soon, your eye is going to be bouncing all over the place when it comes to reading something very heavy like that. And we don't want their eye to be strained in processing that information. We call that a harder read. Again, we want to make it easier for them to process information. When it comes to alignment, there's something that you need to realize as well, and that is going to be visual versus optical alignment. This is something that you can see a lot in visual programs, sorry, design programs. But this is also something that you can almost eyeball sometimes when it comes to designing. Not every program, not every software is going to give you the flexibility for something like this. InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator, they all help you. They all give you tools in order to adjust your visual and optical alignment. So if you have any, if you want to explore that, that's something that's going to be really helpful, especially when you have a lot of text that you're working with. Sometimes an element can be properly aligned based on the measurements, but it appears misaligned because of the design of the specific element. This might be the curve or the shape or the size of an element. And the elements that we're referring to in this example are the text or the letters in the text. This is particularly common with rounded elements like circular shapes or large curvy or curly letters. Visual or optical alignment occurs when something looks properly aligned, but may not necessarily be properly aligned according to the precise measurements of your design. It might look aligned with to your eye, but in relation to the design itself, it is not going to be aligned as far as the mathematics or the precise measurements of the design. Alignment is all about the visual, so if something appears misaligned, don't be afraid to move it where it looks like it should be. I've got two examples here, visual and optical. This text is properly aligned according to the precise measurements of this design. I don't have something to correspond with that in order to kind of show you that alignment, but we'll use that line on the left side of the V of visual to kind of replicate this. Let's just say in this design, the V or where the V ends, the very corner of that, the very end of that V on the left side, according to the rest of the design, that's lined up. It's aligned. Everything is aligned up. But when you take a step back and look at that, maybe you print it, maybe you put it up on full screen, maybe you put it up on a TV just to see it in the format that it's going to be read at. You start to notice that it looks a little bit off. Maybe that V extends a little bit further and makes the rest of the word not look like it's aligned. So what do you need to do here? You can manually change that by moving visual around as far as the word in order to make it aligned, or you can use something what that is called optical alignment. Optical, this text is visually aligned to accommodate the swooping curves of the V. And I used visual again at the bottom there so that you can see it a little bit better with the actual word that we were working with, but optical. So basically what it does is it sits a little bit closer to that line, to that alignment line. Sometimes that line is physical, something that is actually seen within your design, and sometimes that's just something that's used as a guide. But you can see that with visual, and I didn't do this with optical, but with visual, sometimes that is going to go a little bit over that alignment tool or that guide so that you can make sure that everything else is aligned properly. Misaligned text creates a focal point, something that is going to be different within something that is repeated. Picasso said, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. Um, And I have here, after all, what good are the rules if you can't break them once in a while? That's one thing that you need to understand when it comes to these design principles. A lot of them are important for you to understand as far as why do we have them and why do they help us become better communicators, better designers. But at a certain point in your journey as a designer, there are going to be a couple of rules that you can break. There are going to be things that you're going to do different in order to really make your designs grow, in order to find yourself as a designer. This is true for things like photography and videography. Within the last, I would say, 15 to 20 years, I've seen so many different design styles. I've seen so many different photography styles that really break the mold. And the honest truth is, if you were to take some of these photography styles, these ways of shooting, I'm going to use one that's popular right now, is the motion shots, shooting things that are very blurry. And I'm talking about things as far as sports. This is used a lot for portraits as well. But that type of a style, a lot of people have been frowning upon that. And by people, I mean a lot more classically trained photographers, people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, who see that and say, oh, that's improper shooting. That's improper, capturing of what's going on. But for those of us that are younger and we understand why we do those things, we're doing it for artistic emphasis or just trying to emphasize the motion or the emotion of the event or whatever is transpiring. This is going to be true for design as well. There's going to be things that you're gonna break. There are going to be some things that you're going to step over as far as principles. Alignment itself helps make your design look more organized and professional. But if your designs benefit from breaking or using a different type of alignment, break it, do it, do something that's different. Something like this is not, um, you've got a large body of text, but that one line of text that says not aligned, immediately when I look at the screen, that's the first thing that I'm looking at because it pops out. There is emphasis on that. Breaking alignment for a specific element can help create a focal point and draw attention to a particular aspect of your design. It can also help create contrast, which is another principle that we'll talk about later. This is probably what most of you are most familiar with when it comes to alignment. You've got left, center, and right alignment for your text documents, for your reports, your research reports, your essays. This is what you're probably most familiar with. Left alignment. Let's talk about that really quickly. Left alignment, when you're reading this, this is what is called an easier read, and I'll point your attention to why that is. I wish I had a laser that I could kind of point over this presentation for this section. But on that left side of left alignment, you can see that there is an even border as far as where all of that text is going to begin. So as you're reading something like this, and again, this is filler text here, but so it's not something I'll actually read for you guys. But as you're reading, once you get to the end of one line, you already know where your eye is going to go next, as far as where that next line begins. That is the best thing that you can do for when it comes to large bodies of text, because your eye is immediately going to go to a common point of reference, a common reference point, as far as this is where it's going to be starting. For center alignment, this is not true, because your eye is going to be bouncing or even trying to search for where that next line is going to begin. It's not as drastic for something like this, where it's a little bit more even in its alignment or in its spacing, where the next line begins not too far off. But again, this has to do with eye strain. This has to do with just making sure things are easily readable, easily communicated, and easily digestible by your viewers. So something like this is a bad example of how center alignment can really just mess with the way that you read something. And right alignment is especially true of this as well, where you have a common endpoint, but the endpoint is not going to be as important or really even as vital to the reading experience as the beginning point of where your text or your line um, of text is going to begin. But again, you see this jagged edge on that left side of the right alignment that kind of makes your eye bounce around when you're trying to read through a body of text. Here's left alignment in comparison to justified alignment. I like justified, but the problem with justified is that sometimes you have, like we talked about earlier, an implied line or pattern throughout your design. So you want to be careful of this. when it comes to justified alignment. I like justified alignment because it looks very even, very evenly spaced, and it just looks very clean. Um, but that point of there being kind of like random spaces throughout your design in order to compensate for that even alignment is going to happen, and it might create patterns, it might create um, lines or shapes throughout your body of text. Some more examples of alignment. Um, I may need to update this photo on the right because it looks like it's blurring. Maybe it wasn't downloaded properly. But we actually have couple of examples of alignment on this picture on the right side. On the left side text, bodies of text, as far as that column, everything is going to be right aligned. Everything in the middle is going to be left aligned, and everything on the right side is going to be left aligned as well. This creates almost like separate columns of each piece of information or each element. We could call each column a different element, where the middle column looks more like a summary or even like a glossary, captions to go in addition to everything that is being said. The right side is going to be more of your body text, and then that left side is going to be um, maybe some finer points. And again, the vice versa might be true. Left side might be your body text, and that very right side might be kind of like additional details. But this is a good example of how to organize your text and using a variety of different a variety of different alignment principles or alignment styles in order to create a very clean looking body of text. The next thing that we'll talk about is the building blocks of design, points, lines, and planes. I'm going to go through this as quickly as possible, just because a lot of this is repetitive for those of you who've probably seen this recently, or maybe even have a good understanding of this. Points, lines, and planes. Points, lines, and planes make up the fundamentals of design. This is important for you to understand when you use something like Illustrator, because Illustrator uses mathematics and vectors in order to create designs and shapes. Diagrams use points, lines, and planes to visually communicate abstract information. This is a point. For those of you who have taken math, geometry, or anything beyond that, you'll be familiar with this already. Geometric points are on a plane based off of a x and a y. Um, I'm blanking on the terms here, but geometric points, we all understand, especially when it comes to mathematics and geometry, your x and your y, off of the x and y axes, these are going to give you a point, or a coordinate is what I was looking for. Purely geometrically speaking, a point is a set of x and y coordinates. A series of points form a line. For those of you that have recently taken geometry, maybe you're coming out of high school, or maybe you have a rough understanding, remembering that you plot out all of your points and then you connect those with a line. Connecting all of those, a mass of points becomes a texture, shape, plane, or color. In typography, a point ends a sentence or a period, and each letter in a paragraph could resemble a point on a plane. Here are some examples of a point, or even a dot, we can call it, a circle, whatever it might be, being used in order to create shapes, or lines and different abstract designs that we can see here. All of these dots, all of these points on the left example create not only that encompassing circle, but also you can see some lines, some diagonals, and maybe even some different patterns that emerge from something like this. The line, again, a line is the in between of 2 points on a graph. Geometrically, an infinite series of points with length but not breadth. Infinitely going forward, but to stay one size, width-wise can be different for each line, but it grows in length, not in width. It gets longer and not wider. A line is the connection between 2 points. Like I said earlier, lines can have different weights, be curved, continuous, or broken. There is also something called an implied line, which is something that we see in a design. And I think I have an example of that here. We have implied lines where not only do you have lines, but you have shapes or elements that create the space for a line or create the idea of a line there. Just some more examples of lines. being used in order to create an all-encompassing design. Number 25, created from lines. Are important typographically. Lines form the invisible baseline upon which everything hangs. Paragraphs, again, are aligned either left, right, or justified with lines directing the order of the page. Type sits on a baseline. Typographic alignment refers to the organization of text into columns with a hard or a soft edge. Justified column is even along both the left and right sides, and we talked about that already. Left alignment, right alignment, bottom aligned, and top aligned, which we've already seen. I think I have an example. Yes, again, I do repeat this, the idea of a implied line through your text here. So, geometric plane. A plane is a flat surface with height and breadth, the path of a moving line. Shapes are planes with edges. In vector-based software like Adobe Illustrator, shapes have line and fill. Ceilings, floors, walls, and Mac Pros. This was the example was used back when we were in the classroom, but Mac Pros are all physical planes. And probably from wherever you're listening to this lecture, you have several examples around you of what a physical plane is. Planes can be solid or perforated, opaque or transparent, textured or smooth. There's a lot of different varieties of what a plane could be within your circle. A field of text or a paragraph is a plane built from points and lines of text. Line spacing, font size, and alignment create different typographic shapes. Again, some examples of planes being used. So what are the practical applications of alignment that we can see here? Nothing should be randomly placed in a design. Well, let's tackle the spiritual aspect of this. We serve a God of order. We look towards the example of somebody who exemplifies order, portrays order in everything that he does, in everything that he's done throughout creation. There is an idea, there is the principle of order within all of that. Everything has its place. Nothing should be randomly placed in a design. Even the random elements that make your design more visually interesting should have some kind of a importance. There should be some kind of reasoning for why that was placed in your design. Avoid centering more than three lines of text. And again, like I said earlier, if you have different lines of text as far as a whole body of text, with each line being a different idea being presented, like a time, a place, a well, as I already said, place, but maybe something like instructions for the event or whatever that might be. You can totally use even up to five lines of text for that, but you don't want to use too many lines of text within center alignment to the point that it doesn't look as professional anymore. Left alignment is the easiest to read. Like I talked about earlier, justified alignment, I like it. It's clean, it looks great, it looks even. But the problem with that is that you might have some kind of a pattern or a line going through that in order to compensate for those extra spaces needed. Consistent alignment directs the eye and creates hierarchy, which is going to segue into our next lecture, where we will be talking about hierarchy. And again, a lot of these principles um, they help you to understand why it's important to guide the eye to make sure that things are placed in wherever they're placed. Why do different elements always get placed in this certain area? Why do I place this body of text here? Why do I use left alignment? Why do I make sure that this text is bold? You know, look at this slide here. Why is practical usage of alignment in bold? Why is it bigger than the body? It has a place of importance as far as hierarchy. If I were to number out all of the different elements on this screen as far as why they're important, the title or the headline is going to be number one. How do I make sure it's number one? Well, there's color, there's making it bold, there's making it bigger, it's a different typeface. There's a variety of different ways that you can do that. But all of these design principles at their core, help you to become a better communicator, therefore helping you to become a better designer. That's the end of this lecture. I look forward to our next lecture next week. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message either through email. You have my phone number, as well as through Canvas Messenger. But Make sure to read the announcements and go through all of the tasks that you have to fulfill for this week.